These animals are wreaking havoc in the USA, and you won't believe what's happening. Today, we are going to talk about invasive species that are causing a huge problem in the country. But why is the US government taking such drastic measures? And how does this affect the future of American flora and fauna? Stay with us and let's dive in. Number 1. Lanternflies. The USA is facing a growing threat from lanternflies. These colorful insects, although they seem harmless, are a serious problem. The US Department of Agriculture asks that, upon seeing their eggs or adults, you eliminate them and report immediately. Lanternflies were first spotted in the USA in 2014 and have already spread to states like New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, Virginia, Indiana, and Ohio. It is believed that they arrive through commercial shipments and spread via trains, cars, trucks, and planes. Although they are great travelers, they cause significant damage, estimated at $324 million per year. These insects pose a threat to ecosystems and agricultural economies, especially apple orchards and vineyards. Lanternflies feed on the sap of trees, which harms the plant. After feeding, they leave behind a substance called honeydew, which attracts more insects and fosters the growth of a fungus called sooty mold. This fungus is harmful to trees, leaving them stressed and vulnerable to diseases and other insects. Additionally, photosynthesis is impaired, which affects the tree's growth and makes it sick. If lanternflies reach California by 2033, the wine industry there could suffer major losses. Number 2. Apple snail. Now let's talk about apple snails. Authorities are asking that these snails be eliminated. It might sound simple, but it's somewhat unsettling because these snails are invasive. The North Carolina Natural Resources Commission is asking people to crush the eggs and throw them into the water. Curious to see these bright pink eggs, which are very visible and easy to recognize. You can also crush or freeze adult snails, but it is crucial to avoid direct contact with the eggs, and especially not to touch your eyes after handling them, as the eggs contain a toxin that can cause skin rashes. These snails are considered quarantine pests in several countries, such as Australia, China, Malaysia, Spain, and Vietnam. In some U.S. states, like North Carolina, their presence is completely prohibited. Originally, apple snails are found in the lower Paraná region, Uruguay, and the Iguazu River Basin, but they have managed to spread worldwide. It's surprising to see the extent of this global spread, which began when the snails were brought from Argentina to Taiwan between 1979 and 1981, with the idea of using them as a food source. They were then released into agricultural and natural areas, and the situation got out of control. During this period, they also arrived in Hawaii, and from there to the mainland. Today, these snails are already present in several U.S. states, such as Florida, Georgia, Texas, and Louisiana, and continue to spread. In October 2023, they reached North Carolina. These animals are feared for being extremely voracious and having an indiscriminate appetite, which can destabilize aquatic ecosystems as they feed on aquatic vegetation and also prey on local fauna, leaving native snails with less food. This can push species out and cause changes in the ecosystem. Additionally, even predators that eat these snails can be affected. Any creature that eats the eggs can be poisoned. It's no wonder that apple snails are on the list of the world's 100 most dangerous invasive species. The reason for their global expansion is that females lay eggs about once a week, allowing them to quickly dominate new areas. These snails can be dangerous even to those who don't touch the eggs, as they often harbor rat lungworms, which can cause severe diseases. While one must eat the snail raw or undercooked for this to happen, quest for exotic foods can lead to unexpected risks. Besides apple snails, there are many other delicacies that are abundant and easy to collect. The problem really begins when the side effects emerge. When parasites from these snails pass to humans, it can cause severe abdominal pain, liver enlargement, blood in the urine or stools, and difficulty urinating. And these are just the physical symptoms. In the worst cases, the infection can be fatal. But is there any way to deal with apple snails besides crushing their eggs and the snails themselves? On a large scale, the best strategy is to prevent invasion. Once a species establishes itself, removing it becomes nearly impossible. The only example of successful eradication of apple snails was in Palau, a country in Oceania. They managed to get rid of the snails by manually removing them from the infected lake and covering them with a layer of oil. However, the size of the area had a significant impact on the effectiveness of this approach. Removing the snails and their eggs by hand is a common method and works to a certain extent, but it is very time-consuming. In the US, An easier way to deal with hard-to-reach places where eggs may be hidden is to use pure coconut oil spray, which supposedly prevents the snails from hatching. The Arizona Game and Fish Department suggests simply throwing the eggs into the water. They sink and do not develop into snails, which helps control the population. Number 3. Batrachochytrium salamandrivorum. Now, there are concerns about the arrival of a new threat, a pathogenic fungus that could cause a pandemic. Meet Batrachochytrium salamandrivorans, a fungus that primarily affects salamanders and is responsible for a deadly disease known as chytridiomycosis. There is a similar fungus that attacks frogs. Both cause severe problems. In 2008, a mysterious disease caused by this fungus began decimating the population of fire salamanders in the Netherlands, and within 3 years, 96% of them had died. The same fungus is associated with the decline or disappearance of 200 frog species worldwide. Experts warn that it is only a matter of time before this fungus reaches the US, but there is still time to act. They urge an immediate halt to the importation of amphibians, as thousands of live salamanders are brought into the country each year. If a ban is not possible, it is crucial to screen amphibians for diseases when they are traded as pets. Many amphibians from Asia, where the fungus originated, are resistant to it but can still carry it, making screenings even more necessary. In 2016, the US attempted to address the problem with a temporary ban on the trade of 2-in-1 salamander species. But despite these bans, there is no guarantee that the fungus will not enter the country. There are many entry points, and it seems impossible to close them all. In the US, if you have a salamander with spots, the situation is worrying. This is especially serious for the US because the country has the greatest diversity of salamanders in the world. In North America, there are 48% of all known species, and many of them are vulnerable to the fungus. Additionally, the US leads the global market for live amphibian imports, meaning there are not only many of these animals in the country, but also a higher risk of the fungus spreading. Recent studies have shown that the fungus infected 74% of the salamander species tested, and caused death in 35% of them. It is estimated that the fungus could potentially infect between 80 and 1,440 species of North American salamanders. Despite the rapid spread in deaths, there is still little information available, as the fungus was discovered recently, and comparisons are being made with amphibian mortality rate. Fungus spreads through water, and upon contact with the salamander's skin, infiltrates it and begins to grow and reproduce, creating a type of skin disease. The fungus ends up killing many salamanders. Not only will there be an increase in the number of insects, but it will also affect predators that are left without food, destabilize ecosystems, and even impact the climate. Number 4. Zebra mussel. Another major problem in the US is the zebra mussel, a species of freshwater and brackish water mollusk. Discovered in the US in the 1980s, these mussels came from the waters of Eurasia, the Caspian Sea, and the Black Sea, and quickly spread to new locations such as the Mississippi River, the Great Lakes, the Hudson River, and Lake Travis. At first glance, it might seem that these mollusks do not cause major problems. They just stay in their shells. But in fact, these mussels cause more than $1 billion in damage annually in the US. They likely arrived in the US in the ballast water of ships, used to stabilize vessels, and were discharged into new locations. Besides the mentioned water bodies, these mussels have been found in several states. Today, it is estimated that zebra mussels are in 20 US states and are slowly spreading to Canada. But what is the problem with these mussels? They live for 2 to 5 years, which is not long, but each female can lay up to 1 million eggs per year. Zebra mussels have root-like protein filaments called byssal threads, which allow them to firmly attach to solid surfaces such as rocks, docks, or boats. For aquatic organisms, this means difficulty moving, eating, and reproducing, as they get stuck to these mussels. Essentially, it is complicated to perform any activity when covered by these creatures. When there are many of these animals, they can consume almost everything that is edible, which can destabilize the local food chain. Less food for those who feed on plankton means clearer water for predators. Between 1989 and 2004, a company managing the Great Lakes spent $267 million trying to combat these mussels in their pipeline. Problem is that once zebra mussels establish themselves in a body of water, it is almost impossible to remove them. Therefore, the best strategy is to prevent their spread. To avoid the spread of these animals, It is essential to thoroughly wash boats and let them dry for at least 5 days before using them in another body of water. Boat owners and authorities are being encouraged to collaborate to slow the spread of zebra mussel. As a control measure, there are now dogs trained to detect these mussels on boats, even when they are at an early stage and still very small. What about you? You agree with the eradication of these animals we've discussed? Share your opinion below, and take a look at the video that's appearing on your screen now. Click on it to watch, because I picked it especially for you. That's it for today, and see you next time. Curious one.